Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. We have a couple of things announcements-wise. One of which is just an FYI for you. If you are interested in another class that I teach that is quite different from this class, but yet also really interesting and potentially fun and gives you GE credit. This summer I happen to be teaching a class on Los Angeles. It sort of takes LA as a sort of learning lab, and it's called LA Tech City, and it learns about connecting the history of technology, especially networking technologies, the internet, the material history of the internet, and film to understand Los Angeles as a global metropolis. If you're interested in this, it runs in July, and it's part of UCLA's Summer Institutes. We have an info session today, right after class, on 1 p.m. today in Perloff, which is an architecture building, 1220 Perloff. I'll be there, and I just wanted to give you this information. It's, yeah, would love to see some of you, if you happen to be looking for summer classes or credit, love to see you there. So that's that. I want to just talk a little bit about the three survivors, one of whom we've already met, and then introduce our guest speaker for today after that, which is really a very special opportunity for you to hear firsthand from not only eyewitnesses, but people who had survived the Holocaust and the diversity of experiences. Last week we had the privilege of talking to Zenon Neumark, and a number of you were there. And the perspective that he provided us with was that of a Jewish boy who had managed to escape the ghetto, living underground as part of a resistance group, and also changing his identity as a Polish Catholic electrician. And so part of what we learned as well was a perspective on resistance. And I wanted you to think about these questions at the bottom here in terms of your reflections for the papers that you're writing, which is not only what you learned, but really how does memory from an eyewitness change, relate to, complexify, deepen our perspective on the history of the Holocaust that we've been studying. So again, thinking about that history-memory question, right? We've been looking at history primarily through documents. Those documents are primarily textual and visual, sometimes auditory, but the documents themselves don't speak in the same way that a survivor speaks. They speak, to be sure. They have messages and meanings, to be sure. We have to interpret them. But the question for us is really what happens when we have the chance to interact with a survivor, and especially at this moment in time where, as you know, the survivors mostly are in their late 80s or 90s or 100s. So tomorrow we'll meet with two survivors. I'm going to briefly introduce Erica Jacoby and Henry Oster. And this is, again, anyone's welcome to come. You don't have to just be your sections. But at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, so just remember this, 9 and 10 a.m. in 314 Royce Hall, or in the case of Henry, it's 306 Royce Hall. You should attend the one closest to your section time, okay? So the story of Erica, which you have through the film, Swimming in Auschwitz, as well as her memoir, I Held the Sun in My Hands, just to give you just a very brief overview, is she's a Hungarian survivor who was deported to Auschwitz in the similar in the situation to Henry Oster, who was a German survivor who was deported to Auschwitz, and we'll hear today from Eva Hecht, who also was deported to Auschwitz. In the case of Erica, this happened very late in the war. So you remember that Hungary, the Hungarian Jews, were intact as a population, even though there were anti-Jewish laws, even though there were anti-Jewish legislation, even though many of the Jews had lost positions of civil service and were barred from attending Hungarian schools and had been subject to persecution. In 1944, at the beginning of 1944, there was still a faith that they would survive. In a very quick succession of events, when Germany invaded Hungary, and Hungary was already allied with Germany, Eichmann had ordered the Hungarian Jews to be rounded up. They were sent, almost more than 400,000, to Auschwitz in a very quick succession. The ones like Erica Jacoby and her mother, who were selected for labor, were because they happened to be of age. She was 16 years old. Her mother was in her early 40s and had managed to escape being killed right away, gassed. She lost 55 members of her family, which is amazing and extraordinary to think about. Her immediate family. This means uncles, cousins, siblings. She was in a slave labor camp that was also, you might remember, Plasso. This is also where Amon Gert from Schindler's List was. She was not a Schindler Jew, though. She was sent back to Auschwitz-Birkenau, eventually sent to Gross-Rosen in Germany at the end of the war. And one of the things that's remarkable about her story is this story, the idea that she actually swam in a pool that was constructed at Auschwitz in 1944 by the new commandant of the camp, a man by the name of Arthur Liebenhenschel. And this pool exists. It was kind of a trough at one point. It was created under his expansion for the camp. There's a quote that I give you up here from the editor of Rudolf Hess's memoir. He was the camp commandant both before and after Liebenhenschel. And he mentions that not only was he involved with expanding the camp, but he also had converted this pool, this water trough, into a swimming pool for capos and prisoners who worked well. And so Erica will tell you a little bit about this experience of, in the summer, going in this pool. Really remarkable and almost uncanny. With regard to Henry Oster, he has some aspects are similar, but many aspects are different. He was born in Cologne, Germany, the same age as Erica, also born in 1928. He was first deported to Lodz, the ghetto there, where he witnessed not only the process of ghettoization, the cramming of the Jews into a very small area, ridden by famine and starvation and disease, but also really very difficult part of his book where he talks about the death of his father and the fact that they had to leave him outside on the sidewalk because there was no place to bury the dead. A really very disturbing set of images, and we think about the way in which death and dying becomes stripped of its humanity. This, I think, in his book is, to me, one of the most poignant sections where they leave his father, who had died, just outside. Eventually, he's deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and he talks in the book a lot about opportunities that he had to survive. And he calls it the kindness of the hangman because it was people who were also involved in certain aspects of brutality in the camp that had chosen him to give him food, had given him pieces of bread, that had given him things that allowed him to have the sustenance and the strength to survive. He was actually selected because he spoke German to tend horses, believe it or not, in Auschwitz, and then on a death march sent back to Buchenwald, which you might remember is also where Elie Wiesel ended up. And so he was liberated from Buchenwald in 1945, and his book, The Kindness of the Hangman, really is a story, a memoir about those things that people did that helped him survive. So really remarkable. So this is also tomorrow, 306 Royce Hall. Now we have one, this is really interesting to me, is that I've never taught the class with 4 survivors before, but in some ways I feel the urgency to have their voices part of the class, especially at the end, because obviously the survivors won't be with us forever. And the opportunity to have known Erica and Zenon, and I have never met Henry before, and I only recently met Eva Hecht, but to have the opportunity to bring survivors to you, I think is just so unique and really, I think, an opportunity for us to engage with eyewitnesses and survivors of history. So Eva Hecht, who's with us today, is a survivor herself of Auschwitz and Dachau. She, together with her husband Emil, in fact, established a center institute at the University of Denver called the Holocaust Awareness Institute, as well as founded a faculty chair, a research chair in Judaic Studies. And if you go online to the website, you can learn a little bit more about the center, the activities that they do, which are educational, outreach, and courses, as well as conferences and other kind of symposia. And they have a speakers bureau as well. So without really further ado, I'm going to introduce, let Eva Hecht come to the front. I'm going to give her the microphone. We have an opportunity to listen to and engage with her story, and then you have an opportunity for questions, and we'll plan to go until 12:15 or so. I would just ask that if you have phones, just kind of silence them, and please join me in welcoming Eva Hecht. Is it okay if I put this on you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just put on your shirt. Okay, and then this can just go in your pocket. Okay, perfect.
If it's close.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. My name is Eva Hecht. I'm a Holocaust survivor. I want to thank you all for your interest and your quest for truth. I would like to start at the end instead of the beginning and tell you why I agreed to come and talk to you. Let me tell you what happened just a couple days ago. For the past half century, as part of their required studies, German school children have learned about the Holocaust and the atrocities committed by Nazis and tolerated most of the German people of that generation. Now, the new German right is insisting it is time to forget the Holocaust and change how Germans see their past. They are even starting to teach that World War II was started by the United States and Russia, not by Hitler invading Poland. The Jewish philosophers teach that we, as human beings, are what we remember. Memory is everything. Memory is destiny as well. 2 years ago, the FBI director, James Comey, declared that all his agents should visit the Holocaust Museum and learn about what happened. He felt that the Holocaust was perhaps the most significant event in history for two reasons. First, because of the extent and methodology of atrocities. Second, for the wanton disregard for human suffering and the complicity of the population. The population of Germany, as well as of Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, and many other countries. Mr. Comey specifically said that Poland, Hungary, and their people were accomplices of Nazi Germany, and they, in fact, made the Holocaust possible. Immediately, the leaders of Poland and Hungary demanded apologies from the FBI director and insisted they were victims too, not perpetrators. President Obama ordered FBI director to apologize. He refused. The president insisted. I know that in this room I'm speaking with future leaders of our country and the world. And as such, you need Sorry. As such, have to know the truth. And since I was there, despite the utter painfulness of the memories, I consider it my obligation to tell you what happened. I am from Hungary. I would like you to know that people always try to rewrite history. They would like to whitewash themselves, but I'm here to testify to the truth. But the truth is even deeper. The Holocaust did not happen in a vacuum. It was not an isolated incident, only perpetrated by Adolf Hitler or by one country, Nazi Germany. The Holocaust was the culmination of centuries of persecution against the Jewish people. What am I about to tell you is very hard to talk about. It makes me very nervous and even sick to remember. It is the stuff of nightmares. But it is important that you know the truth, and so I have no choice. Now, before I tell you my personal story, I need to set the stage. Of course, there were no cell phones, but we didn't have telephones either. We didn't have television. That came after the war. But we didn't have radios. There were no cameras, but very few people had them. We had basic electricity, but no running water, no heat, and so certainly not air conditioning. No indoor plumbing, so life was hard and primitive. There was nowhere to go, and it was very hard to find about things. I'm now an old woman, but when this happened, I was only 16. And I looked just like any one of you. I was tall for my age, I was blonde, and I was very skinny. I had the long braids down my back. I was just a schoolgirl. I was the third of 5 children. My sister Magda was the oldest. Excuse me. Next came my brother, Tibor, then me, Eva, and then called my little brother, Aichuka, my little sister, Petike. Her name was Kato, but we called her Petike, which means a little dot, like a polka dot. On March 19, 1944, the German Gestapo moved into Hungary. That day was the beginning of the end for Hungarian Jewry and for us. But even before that day, we in Hungary had to live with many anti-Jewish laws and restrictions, especially since Hungary became the ally of Germany. We Jewish children were no longer allowed to go to high school. I was already in, so I could stay. But new ones they did not let in. Of course, not college. The Jewish professors were thrown out of the universities. They took away Jewish businesses. They took away our livelihoods. The Hungarian government stole my father's business, the business that he and his brother had built their lives, and gave it to a non-Jew. Children called us dirty Jews. They were encouraged by their parents, the Catholic Church, the police, and the press, and the government itself. But nothing prepared us for what became our lot. After the German occupation, almost each day they brought new laws and restrictions against us. First, everybody had to wear a yellow star. In my hometown of Nyíregyháza, and I understand all the town and villages in Hungary, the Gestapo asked for a list of all Jewish leaders, and the Hungarians gladly complied. The Jews were forced to go to the Hungarian officials and hand over all their monies and valuables. Those who refused were threatened to be shot. After they threw most Jewish families out of their homes and ordered all Jews to move into designated streets. These were a few streets what became the ghetto. I'm talking from Nyíregyháza, Hungary, my hometown. We thought we were lucky our street was in the designated area. But now we had to take other people into our home, so many that we were about 2 families in each room. 14 people. At first we were 5,000 people, crammed into only a few blocks. And then they brought in all the Jewish people from the villages and the surrounding provinces, and forced them to live with us also. Remember, these were the Hungarians, not yet the Germans. At the end of April, we got new orders. We had to leave the ghetto and move to a brick factory on the outskirts of town called Nyíries. We were allowed to take only what we could carry on our backs and in our hands. We were forced into a storage shed that was open on all 4 sides. It only had a roof. For the night, we had to sleep in the dirt. We huddled close together for warmth, since we only had a couple of blankets that we managed to bring with us. We only had the food, but we managed to bring. Water had to be brought from miles away in wooden barrels. One day, my father was among those who was sent to bring the water. On his way, he was beaten up. The Hungarian gendarmes, they can call military police, washed over the water carriers and beat them up for their own amusement. Around the middle of May came a new order. We were to be resettled. We could only take with us what we can carry, since we would have to walk for miles. My parents packed our belongings again. They and my brother Tibor took the heaviest load and gave my sister and me somewhat lighter, so my little brother, who was only 12, and my little sister, only 5, should carry as little as possible. Surrounded by armed gendarmes, we were forced to walk open fields until we came to the railroad with freight cars. We had place enough. They packed us in 80 to 100 people per freight car. We had place enough only to sit on our packages. 2 buckets, one for water, 1 bucket in lieu of a toilet. We were in these cars for 3 days. Since freight cars are not insulated, the noise of the wheels was overwhelming. It sounded like they were crying and screaming. And so were we. So were we all. And no one knew where we are going. The second day on our trip, the train stopped at the city of Kasha, or Koshica in. They opened the freight car's door from the outside and allowed me and another person to bring back water. I walked back. I could not see the end of the freight cars. They were too many. And inside, thousands of people. That was the only time they let us get water. The trip lasted 2 more days and 2 more nights. After the second night at dawn, I awoke and I saw my father and a few other men standing dressed in their kittel and talit. The kittel is a white cotton prayer robe. Men wear it only on their wedding, during the Passover Seder, if they conduct a service, and on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and in their death, when he is buried in it. The talit is a prayer shawl every man wears after his bar mitzvah. My father and other men were reciting the prayer of Vidui, the prayer for dying and the dead. My father's kind, gentle face was tear-stained afterwards. He blessed us all, 5 of us, and asked each one of us to always look out for each other. The next morning, we arrived in Auschwitz-Birkenau. An SS soldier would open the sealed car doors. He screamed, "Raus, raus, schnell, out, out, hurry." As people started to get out, my mother desperately searched for my little brother's shoes. He must have taken them off as she could not find them. She asked me to stay behind and try to look for it. I moved everything around me. I stayed until a man in striped pajama-like suit pushed me out of the wagon. Then outside, I was blinded from the light, the sunlight. I saw men standing, 5 in a row. I heard my name spoken. It was my father. And my father was asking if I found the shoe. Before I was able to answer, the SS came yelling, "You accursed, goddamn filthy Jew, shut up." He hit my father over his head. That was the last time I ever saw him. And that is my last memory of him. The SS yelled at me to keep on moving. I was pushed along. When I got to the front of the platform, I saw a very elegant SS soldier. He had white gloves, with those gloved hands, he motioned some people to the right and some to the left. When it came to me, he pointed me to the right. Only later did I find out who the elegant soldier was. It was Dr. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death. Those of us who went right got another chance to live. Those who went left were sent to the gas chambers and then to the crematorium. As I went right, I saw my sister Magda ahead of me. She had managed to stay behind and was waiting. I asked, "Where is Mother? Where are the little ones?" I hadn't seen them since the rail car. Magda said my mother was here, but went back to be with the little ones on the right. I turned left, and I saw only my mother's back. I recognized her coat and her scarf. And next to her were Petit Cat, and my little brother, he was limping barefoot on the gravel. I was dazed and lost. I didn't understand what goes on. The SS back orders in German, "Los, los," that means schnell, schnell. My sister and I hurried to catch up with the other women who were being led to a wooden barrack. We stood in front of this barrack for hours, hungry, thirsty, exhausted. Finally, we were let inside. There we saw a huge room manned by SS soldiers with guns and huge German shepherd dogs. The SS ordered us to undress. We had to leave our clothing, and we were allowed only to keep our shoes. I could not believe my ears. Do they really mean for us to undress in front of men? My sister prodded me to obey. When we were undressed, women shaved our heads and all our body hair. They pushed us toward showers and ordered us out to the next room where they gave some clothing. Before our transport, concentration camp prisoners were given striped prison pajamas or clothes. I think by the time we came, there were too many of us and not enough those pajamas. So they just threw us whatever clothing they have left from before the women came before us. Now hairless and naked, I looked for my sister. I couldn't find her. Magda, Magda, I heard someone calling Eva, Eva. We were standing almost next to each other, but without the hair we couldn't recognize each other. We started crying, but I heard some women laugh. I couldn't understand why, but today I know both expressed the same emotion. They ordered us out. We filed out 5 in a row. Outside, the rain was coming down. As the rain fell on my freshly shaven head, a chill ran through my body. They took us to the gypsy camp, but in the barrack were only Hungarian women. The next few days is a complete blur in my memory. I recall only that we got transferred to Camp C. It was a camp for Hungarian women. My sister and I assigned to Block 11. There were 16 of us to a bunk. It was so tight that if one had to turn, we all had to turn. They woke us up at 4 a.m. in the morning, made us stand outside for hours at one time till the SS came to count us. My sister volunteered to fetch the food. She pulled me with her. She told me, you have to try to do something to get out of the bank. She prodded me to eat that nondescript slop they called soup. Magda tried anything to get me moving. My experiences in Auschwitz would take me a very long time to tell, but I feel I must tell you just a couple. After a few weeks, one early afternoon, the head of our block, a 19-year-old red-haired Slovak girl, she had already hair, named Alice, told two of the girls to go out and stand guard at the front door of our cell block. Quickly, she told us to listen. Dr. Mengele is coming. He will ask you if you are sick or pregnant or you need special help. Don't say anything. Don't believe him. No matter how convincing he will sound, don't believe his sweet, caring voice. He is the angel of death. All of you are healthy. All of you have everything. You don't need anything. Dr. Mengele came. He was elegant, with shiny black boots and white gloves, with a warm, friendly smile and caring voice. He asked us the same question exactly as Alice said he would. Despite Alice's warning, a few women stepped forward. I heard one lady said, "I am a diabetic, I need insulin." Others said, I don't know what, something else. Mengele counted how many stepped forward, and he promised them they will get special treatment, whatever they need. When Mengele left, Alice always had a horsewhip with her. She had gotten to Auschwitz 3 years before us. Before that, she was taken along with other girls and forced them to be horse for the German soldiers. And after that, when they were through, sent them to Auschwitz. Now she took the whip and mercilessly beat everyone who stepped forward to talk to Mengele. And she was screaming, "You stupid idiots. You let yourself be tricked by him? Idiots." Then she turned to the rest of us. "They don't matter anymore," she screamed. "They are already dead. But I want you to be, I want it to be a lesson to you, rest of you. You are all strong, healthy, every day that you survive, you are one day closer to liberation. One day this insanity will end. And I wish all of you to see that day. And then she broke down and cried and ran back to her place. My sister and I got lucky. We were selected for work detail. This is how they used us. We were ordered to strip naked. Then with our right arms held high up over our heads, we had to walk in front of Mengele. He decided whether we went one way or another. It was the ultimate humiliation. My sister and I made a pact. If one of us was sent one way and the other, we would wait and try to run to each other. If we were to die, we're gonna die together. And we had to be careful. The Germans would always separate girls if they knew they were sisters, because they knew sisters would help each other. And they didn't even want to have us to have that. We were both selected on August 10th, 1944. We were among 800 to be sent by freight cars to Kaufering near Landsberg, which was they were sub-camps of Dachau. I later found out they had about 250 some sub-camps around there. There we were made to work outside and level the ground. We didn't know it at the time, but there was an ammunition factory below us, and the Germans were hiding it from the Allied forces so they couldn't bomb it. Our work served to camouflage the munition below. By the end of March 1945, the Germans felt the end was close. They sent us from camp to camp. In one camp, my sister got sick with spotted typhoid fever from the ever-present lice. She was so sick and had such high fever, but they made us get up and move again. She walked some, and I carried her some as best as I could. And since I was mostly down to skin and bones myself, somehow we made it to the next camp. And so it went until the 25th of April. The real sick and weak were put in 2 open railway cars. My sister was among them, and I stayed with her. In this way, we traveled for 3 days, off and on, to Dachau's main camp. I was somewhere inside and I couldn't see just up, but the train hardly ever stopped. We were given no food, no water, so the miserable rain started, and that saved us. We opened our mouth and caught whatever we could and licked whatever fell down. And this was just enough to keep us alive a little bit longer. We were caught in this train in Schwabhausen, which happened to be 2 miles between the German and the American forces. Bullets were flying, and the American must have bombed the locomotive that pulled our train. But next morning, the American could not have known. They pulled the locomotive that pulled the rail cars. The Americans could not know that the caravan was carrying prisoners, So the German has to be stopped. So, but at night, the Germans managed to bring a new locomotive, and we continued our trip to Dachau. The railroad stopped in front of a huge iron gate, and we arrived there on the morning of April 28th. For a full day, we were stopped in front of that huge iron gate. At that time, I had no idea where we were, but later I found out that was the where we were waiting. It was the gate to the Dachau crematorium. My guess is that we were all meant to be inside, go inside, as we were sick and useless. The next day, Saturday afternoon, that was Friday, the rain finally stopped. Someone, I have no idea who, told us to get out from the cars, but since the door was sealed from the outside, those of us who could, we climbed over the wagon. I stayed behind with Magda, and two more women helped me to get her up and out, and two below helped us catch her because she couldn't climb. Once out, I saw a long row of covered cars, all covered and shut. Ours was open car. We left the rail cars and we walked down the road for a while. We got into the main camp. We went through another gate. Behind us, on each side of the road were rows of buildings. We saw the Germans packing up and leaving. Whoever was there took us down to the watch gate. Someone opened the door and we were led through. Behind this was an electric fence, and then the Dachau's main camp for prisoners. We went through this and we saw the two buildings. One was the bathhouse and one was the storage building. We were shown to what was the bathhouse, and we were starving, dying of thirst, bone cold, soaked to the skin, but they let us take a hot shower with real soap. It was my first shower since August of 1944, the day I left Auschwitz. We got dry clothing, a dry blanket, and a thick hot soup. They let us stay to sleep in the now empty storage building next to the bathhouse. The next day was Sunday morning. Someone came in and said, just stay down when you hear noises, don't stand up, and don't look through the window. But being me, I wanted to know what was going on. I looked out the window, and on the other side of the electric fence, I saw a soldier with long gun, with open bayonet, and it wasn't a German soldier, because he wasn't in black or blue. It was an American in army green. At that same day, April 29th, at noon, we were liberated by Patton's Third Army. Later, I heard when the Americans got to the long row of covered rail cars, they opened them and found them filled with thousands of people, all dead. They had been inside, I don't know how long, with no food and no water. And somewhere along the way, or they were dead when they loaded them, I don't know. they were all corpses. And all of us had been meant for the crematorium, which were stopped in front for the long day before. But the Americans were coming and the Germans left, so instead we were left to live, and we had the chance to take a shower. This year will be the 72nd anniversary of our liberation. I often wonder what would have happened if I had found my little brother's shoe. Certainly, I have run after him and gone with him and my mother and Petike to the left. And then I would not be here to tell you this story. Thank you.
So we have a chance for questions and reflections. And what I'll do is I'll try to repeat the questions so that Ava can hear.
Yeah.
So.
You spoke about how your cell block leader told you after Dr. Mengele came and spoke to some of you that one day the liberation would come and all this would end. Did you believe that?
We were in a big block, put in a big block, and the bunks had three stages, one, down, up, and all the way above. In between the two sides of the barrack was made perhaps for 400 people, but we were 1,000 packed in. So in the middle of the block, it was like a chimney, and Alice, the block protester, could walk on it. It was probably, it had a stove before that long brick chimney of the length of the barrack, and that's where Alice could walk and talk to us. So she asked us not to tell Mengele that if we are hungry or we are sick or we are pregnant or we have diabetes or not, he couldn't care less. But anybody who stepped forward, Mengele got it together when he left. We were about 1,000 in the barrack that 400 was supposed to be. He asked them to go on the side. He counted how many, and then afterwards he came to get them. When he left, Alice beat them up to teach us, not because she was mean, to teach us that it doesn't matter to them anymore because they go straight to the gas chamber and then to the crematorium. They will come through the night through the chimney, but nobody should tell Mengele that you are sick or pregnant or because he doesn't want to help you.
Did you believe her when she said that the liberation will come one day? Did you believe her?
When she was already a weathered woman at the ripe old age of 19. And they had already hair. First, they took them to the front, to the Germans, for the German soldiers to be horse. When they got through with them, they sent them to Birkenau, Auschwitz. And so they had their hair and they became blockaders. And they had a hard time to keep 1,000 women who most of them were in a complete shock after shock after shock, hungry and thirsty and mistreated worse than animals. So it was very hard to keep them in, disciplined and not to talk to them. And Mengele was a doctor, a medical doctor. I don't know how he managed to, with his Hippocratic oath, to help people, but he did. And when he left, Alice wanted to show and get it through our head that you cannot be sick, you won't survive. They send you to the crematorium, to the gas chamber in the crematorium. So it sounded like she was cruel, but in my opinion, that was the only way she was able to impress us what we are to do. And she said, when he left, that she wants everybody, as many as possible, to survive. That was impossible with the food they gave us, but at least let us not go straight to the gas chamber, because that's for sure gone. This way you have a chance, perhaps you make it, perhaps you don't. Some of us didn't.
Questions? Please. How were you treated by the American army? Because they've read some examples where the Russian army was not particularly
No.
accommodating. How were the Americans?
Oh, fantastic, just fantastic. They were so kind to us that they took my sister right away to the Revere because she was still sick. And they tried to do everything, and they helped us. She was in very bad condition. So the Americans really took, they tried to give us food, good food, but I was lucky I couldn't eat yet, because it's just like you forget how to eat, and we never saw meat or fat or things like that. So they made a mistake, and some people got very sick with diarrhea from the food. But I was lucky I didn't eat just tea and toast, so it didn't happen to me.
I'm going to interject because I'm her daughter, and I'm going to ask you to tell the story of the 3 American soldiers who shot the people and Patton refused to court-martial them.
Oh. When the American soldiers liberated the Camp Dachau, well, Dachau did not have women. That's why we were in that, they didn't let us out, but they had also prisoners, non-Jews, but prisoners for other Germans, like who were not agreeing with the government, I don't know, but they had all kinds. We were only the Jewish girls in that camp. So, and that's why they asked us to stay in. But the soldiers came in, and they saw the rail cars with dead people. They went to the crematorium, I understand. The dead people were like cordwood, were standing in front of the crematorium to be burned. They were dead already. And then they went into the barracks that were still living human beings, or they were living. And they saw that, and 2 or 3 soldiers, they got absolutely berserk. And they caught a couple German guards, and they shot them. And that was against the American law for them to do that. And they wanted to court-martial them, the 2 soldiers who did it. And I understand that Patton stopped it. they were overwhelmed what they saw in those barracks. I don't know when in the barracks, when they were last fed, I have no idea.
After the war, did you try to return to Hungary, or did you know that you didn't want to go back?
Well, I did and I didn't. At first, my sister was sick, and it's a long story, and then till she got better. But I wanted to go back one more time because I knew that my father went also to a workplace, I hoped. I knew that my mother was gone with the 2 children because they went to the left. So I knew what it meant by that time. I hoped for my father and my brother. But then I found out when we went back to Germany in August of '44. Until then, my sister was sick and I worked in the hospital. And so we were better and we went back. And I found my brother, he was in a sanatorium in Prague, my oldest brother. And I went back to Hungary. It was very, very hard. And there I found out, I met somebody who was with my father. And they were, my father was in Krakow, sent in Krakow to work. And then they sent them on a death march. And they arrived to Austria in Mauthausen, another concentration camp. And they asked them a couple of days before the end of the war that they sent them still on a death march. And he was tired and sick, most probably, and old. They were chasing them about 3 months from one place to another till they got to Austria. And he decided to stay behind, and all the ones that stayed behind, about 200 or 300, were clubbed to death. So they killed him about a couple of days before the liberation. And my brother survived. He was very sick. And he was in Prague in a sanatorium where I found him. So the 3 of us survived. My older brother and my older sister, and I was the youngest one. I was already 17, going on 18.
Did you go back to your hometown?
Yeah, I did go back to the hometown with my sister, and there I found out about my father. And we couldn't stay. I couldn't even get close to the house where we lived. It was a living cemetery without bodies. It's very hard, but you have to know the truth. And everybody would like to, Germany now wants to whitewash themselves. I wanted to go back to Auschwitz one day when, what's his name? Governor Huckabee went. I said to my husband, I want to go to Auschwitz, perhaps it will bring me closure. And he looked at me and he said, what closure? What kind of, how do you close it? Just because you are in Auschwitz, you're going to close this? You can't close it. It will. My sister said, what do you mean? It will close. It will bring up you. All the wounds will be just ripped open again. So I never went back to Auschwitz because I wasn't able to go into to the house where we lived and grew up.
You're planning to go to Germany, though.
Yeah, but Germany, I have no if I have a chance, I want to go and see Dachau, how it looks, or how they put the memory on there. But I was only in Dachau the last day before liberation. The next day I was liberated. By the way, it was very funny. When I turned around and I saw the soldier, I said, "The Americans are here." And I heard some people behind me saying, "She's crazy, she lost it. She just lost it already." And everybody will ask me, how did I know? I never saw an American soldier before. The only thing I knew that the soldier that I saw on the outside was in khaki. It wasn't blue like the German SS or black, the German soldier. So, and we were in Schwabhausen for 2 days between the Americans and the Germans. So I heard the Americans, so I deducted this is not black SS, so it must be an American. So I didn't lose it completely.
Any final questions that anyone's asked?
What was your life like after you were liberated? Like, how did you start all over again?
How did life start back after liberation? How did you start over after liberation? Like, what was your life like in the years after the first 2 or 3?
Well, starting over life at 17, it is not very easy, and not having parents to tell you what to do. So, and I had my sister, and she was 20, an old lady already. So, we did. We worked. We started working. And we just managed to survive, because I didn't find anybody from the family either, not my parents. They were all wiped out. As a matter of fact, didn't find anybody, because I was, for my class, I didn't find any one of the Jewish girls that went with me in the 6th grade that's high school already. In high school, I never found anybody, so they did not survive. Most people, it wasn't easy to survive, no.
When did you come to the U.S.?
Oh, we came to the United States in 1951, December 15. But I was married already. And my husband had a scholarship to medical school in Seattle, but we didn't come in time, so I started working for a funky shoe company for 75 cents an hour. And I was thankful for that.
How did you come to terms with the loss of your parents? It was abrupt and it was unjust.
Say that again.
How did you come to terms with the loss of your parents? Did you come to terms with that?
That is also very hard to comprehend, because when we Jews lose somebody, we have the luxury for a week to sit and commemorate and do these things. That was very hard, that we could not mourn. There wasn't a mourning period, so that's why I thought if I go, I will bring a closure to it. It wouldn't have, but it can't. Like it is now, I'm old. And everybody gets old. But you look back and think about it, that you had never been young. They took away my youth. I just got old without ever being young. And that's not easy.
Where did you start over, in what country, after you immigrated, before coming to the U.S.?
Well, basically, I stayed in Germany, and we came back. We went to Hungary, and then I came back to Germany, and I worked as a resettlement officer. That means I worked to making papers and going through for all because there were a lot of displaced persons, not just me, in Bavaria, and I worked in the resettlement office, and then in the end before I came in 51, I became the head of it. So anybody who went to Australia, South America, United States, wherever, they went through this resettlement office. So I worked, and I don't even know how I made a living, but I did.
Is that when you met your husband?
No, my husband worked for the Joint Distribution Committee, and it's a long story. And I worked in Salzburg, and I brought them that would be another story, because the Polish Jews who went back after the war to Poland to look most probably for parents or sisters, brothers, whatever, and at night they killed them, the ones that survived Poland. So there was a coming out from Poland and from every place, the Jews. So when we came back with my brother from Hungary, I went to Hungary and we came back from my brother. I stayed in Salzburg behind to help. At that time we had to take the people from the Austrian camp through the forest to Germany, because they did not let them through, because of every place they stop you and you have to have papers, and you didn't have no papers to go out. So a lot of people came, so I helped them till the German border. And my husband from the German border took it to different displaced person camps. They had Feldafing and every place they had. And he took them there, and there I met him. He was also a Holocaust survivor, and I lost him 6 years ago.